Hello everybody, my name is Nick Starwind and welcome to another dive into the Lost Files with something very special today, although a tad bit delicate for some people at the moment. And with it being the 75th anniversary and in this case the 20th anniversary, I thought we'd take a look at Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Oh come on, I haven't even started yet. At least give me a moment to do what I need to do before you start spamming me with flags, because all you know, I'm not a Thomas YouTuber, but this lines up with my fascination into lost media. Many of you have actually requested I talk about this film, not because of any recent incidences, but because of the history behind this production being so tainted that a good dive will shed some light on the ins and outs that led to this movie's existence and, of course, its many different versions during production. So, if you're unfamiliar with Thomas and the Magic Railroad, let me give you a quick breakdown as to how it came about. Thomas and the Magic Railroad is the first feature film about the famous Little Blue Engine, and its history is plagued to the point that it almost feels like it should have never been made. Something I agree with wholeheartedly from a British viewer perspective and a fan of the old series. Released in the year 2000 and directed by Britt Allcroft herself, it was about Thomas working with the members from the Shining Time universe to restore the magic to the island of Sodor, while also thwarting the plans of the evil Diesel 10, the only surviving character from this film. Early planning started way back in 1996, when Britt Allcroft was approached by the London branch of Paramount Pictures, wanting to adapt her idea for developing both universes of Thomas and Shining Time Station into a feature film. It seemed like a bigger production scale for the time as well, with the film being made both in the UK and US with a much more in-depth script, expanding more on characters and sequences and flowing a lot better than the trash we got later. This, however, would come to a grinding halt as Paramount removed its UK branch and at the same time cancelling all production for this film, leaving Britt Allcroft in a very sticky situation. But she was still determined to get it off the ground no matter what. Fast forward to 1999, after the release of Season 5, she was able to sell the film to Detonation Films, and thus began the slow decline into madness that would soon follow this movie, with continuous rewrites, cutting, footage being left on the cutting room floor, going back and forth between edits because of test audiences' continuous nitpicking, and after all this leading to its inevitable box office failure. Now, personally, I do not like this film. I used to love it as a child because, well, it was Thomas on the big screen. But as time passed and I've watched many different films, including the recent Thomas films, I've come to generally hate it from not only a film standpoint, but from a production point as well, which I will go into more details later, but that isn't the point of this video. I know a lot of you love this film because you grew up with it, and there's nothing wrong with that. So what exactly is missing and what footage exists to give evidence to it? Well, let's take a dive once again into the Starwind Zone. Files are stored away in the back, collecting dust and all sorts. Show the trust that I have got, gaily boasts the fandom. In and out they sneak about, sharing stuff with their friends. And when their friends go do the same, pop, you're in the Starwind Zone. So just in case you were ever spared the horror of watching this godforsaken film, let me bring you up to speed and explain what happens in this movie. A long time ago, there was an engine called Lady, who travelled between Thomas's world, the island of Sodor, and the live-action world called Shining Time Station, and was full of magic that gave people like the miniature conductors the ability to travel back and forth also. However, this was until a Diesel, called Diesel 10, comes along and attempts to destroy her, and she disappears and no one ever sees her again. Fast forward many years, Diesel 10 returns to the island of Sodor to find her, while at the same time Mr. Conductor, played by Alec Baldwin of all people, from the Shining Time universe, comes to watch over the railway as the Fat Controller has gone on holiday. Mr. Conductor soon finds out that his ability to travel has become increasingly more difficult and decides to neglect his duties and go in search for answers. Meanwhile, in Shining Time, we find a man called Burnett Stone, played by Easy Rider Peter Fonda, who has kept the engine known as Lady in a cave all these years trying to fix her up, as he was with her when she was attacked and wants to put things right, not really knowing how important she is. This is when his granddaughter, Lily, played by Mara Wilson who needed cash, comes in the picture, and also Mr. Conductor's cousin, played by Michael Rogers, the only good actor in all of this, as they both go to the island of Sodor together and aid Mr. Conductor in finding the secret to their problems, as well as helping Burnett get over his guilt for what happened in the past and bring Lady back to the island of Sodor, thus restoring the ability to travel between the two worlds. Oh, also, Thomas the Tank Engine is in it, but you wouldn't really notice that considering it's got his goddamn name in the title. But if you think it's as simple as I just made it out to be, dear God, you are wrong. It's a mess on the screen and can be very confusing at times, and reviewers like Nostalgia Critic have ripped this film to shreds if you want to take a look. Now, after many years since the film's initial release, there have been many interviews conducted with different people who were a part of the production team, including Britt Allcroft herself, who personally talked about her experiences directing this film and the difficulties she faced throughout, right until the end, where the film was cut without her approval, which, if you know anything about the film industry, is a very common practice to do. Bad that it is. The most notable organ that was removed from this body of a movie was the introduction of a character called P.T Boomer, who was the villain of the Shining Time universe, while Diesel 10 was Sodor's villain. Neither of them knew each other, but had the same goal of destroying Lady and were an inconvenience to Burnett and Mr. Conductor, equally doing nothing but the occasional taunt until the final chase scene when it all comes together. Another alteration to the film was the replacement of voice actors, as in the first cut to the movie, actors such as Angelis were originally set to voice specific characters from the Steam team, while others were casted for Thomas and Diesel 10. But much like P.T Boomer, test audiences were very negative about the voices, including some saying that Diesel 10 would be considered too scary for children. Not sure why they weren't expecting a villain to be too scary when that's the point, but because of all this the voices were re-recorded and the rest thrown in the bin. But what information do we have that gives evidence to both these previous editions existing in the first place? Well, one of the amusing things about the final cut of the movie is that it was done so late in production that all trailers and promotional footage still contain little snippets of the original work done on it, including one shot in the final edit itself that has P.T Boomer in it. In order to take this out, they would have had to reshoot the entire scene, which was impossible. First off is the original teaser trailer for the film, which was narrated by Eric Idle of Monty Python fame, and includes the original voices of Thomas and Diesel 10. Take a look.
This summer, take a magical trip to a world unlike any other. An enchanting place, where adventure is only a whistle away. Destination Films presents Alec Baldwin, Peter Fonda, Mara Wilson, and Thomas.
Little engines can do big things.
Things are gonna change around here, puffball. Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Rolling into theatres everywhere, July 2000.
Now they're very different voices and a lot more serious than the childish little engines can do big things one we kept hearing over and over again. Although both Diesel 10's voices are really good, so I could have gone either way with it. But that doesn't stop with reveals. Here is the first official trailer for the film.
He fired the imagination of millions around the world. Now, he's headed for the big screen in his very first movie. Thomas the Tank Engine.
Who else were you expecting?
Destination Films proudly presents your passport to Thomas and the Magic Railroad.
All aboard!
Important day, Mr. C?
It is a very important day.
But something has gone wrong.
Hello? Junior, you've got to come here right away.
The sparkle has left the land,
I've run out of gold dust, and because of that, I'm losing my energy as well.
Just hold on, cuz.
and it will take a hero with nerves of steel
Don't worry, I'm on my way.
to bring the magic back.
I'll get you, you blue puffball!
This summer, you're invited to unwind,
This is just like the fun fair.
take a load off,
I don't think you meant to do that.
No.
and experience life on the fast track.
Yeehaw!
Losing your sparkle, eh? What perfect timing.
Alec Baldwin,
I've got to find more gold dust.
Peter Fonda,
This is your shining time to...
Mara Wilson,
You're a really useful engine, Thomas.
and Thomas.
Now that's what I call a perfect landing.
Thomas and the Magic Railroad. This summer, share the wonder with your family.
I'll save a seat for you.
Although all the voices are now different, excluding one sequence with Diesel 10, we see a lot of unfinished special effects, such as the top of the sets, string pulling Thomas along, and a few jittered shots here and there. But the main addition to this is the clip of the finale of the film, where you clearly see P.T Boomer on top of Diesel 10 as they fall off the bridge. This clearly shows how late the edit came, because by the time you get the UK trailer, which is what I saw, he is no longer present, thus becoming the final edit we know. But funnily enough, there is one more trailer I'd like to show you, and this one comes from our favourite place for unearthed footage, Japan, which I consider to be the best place for a gold mine of treasures. But take a look at this.
You've probably heard people talk about it, but have you ever been there? It's a magical place that's not on any map. Come with us and we'll show you the way. And all you have to bring is your imagination. For one little girl,
You're coming with me to Grandpa's, Bluebird.
it began as just another trip to visit her grandfather.
Do you want me to get off here?
And right from the start,
Hello, Lily.
Hi, Grandpa.
she knew that this wasn't going to be an ordinary journey.
It is a very important day.
Now, she's making new friends.
I'm Patch. I'm Lily. You ever ridden a horse before?
She's hearing old stories.
This engine's name is Lady. She's as precious as gold. It's because she's magic.
And she's discovering
Trains, talking trains. I'm off to see them right now on the island of Soda, and cousin. Do you want to come?
What do you think, Mutt?
a wondrous new world
What's that noise?
The trains, I told you they talk.
where the people are fantastic.
The universe of the entire conductor family is in jeopardy. You'll have to help me find the source of all our family's gold dust. But I'm waiting on the perfect wave.
The trains are friendly. And the possibilities are endless.
It's a beautiful day.
Until evil threatens the island of Sodor.
Gonna get my revenge, you and that engine.
And she must find the magic
I know that your grandpa could help if he would just believe that he could.
that will bring a legend to life.
Special coal from the island of Sodor. That's what Lady needs.
Climb aboard for the most amazing adventure of them all.
I will be responsible, reliable, really useful.
With Peter Fonda, Mara Wilson, and Alec Baldwin as Mr. Conductor. Thomas and the Magic Railroad.
Wow. I feel like this was so early in production that they just thought, hell yeah, P.T Boomer is going to be in this. Let's exploit the hell out of him, because he actually is important in some of these clips he appears in. But wow, talk about overconfidence before you gave it the final stamp for approval, guys. But despite all this, the film was released and no one questioned anything about the alterations, and it still went on to being a massive failure. But after all the interviews and rumours spreading about this alternative story over the years, in 2007 someone leaked the original script for the film online, and thus the Thomas community was introduced to the concept of what if? Now this is sort of a final draft of the script. As Britt Allcroft mentioned in their interview, a lot of different ideas that appear in this script and were gradually phased out. So excluding the final product, this is the most complete version of the script we know of. So what are the differences? Well, if you heard my brief explanation of the film, or heck, watched the film enough times you're those annoying people who talk along to it in a crowded room, let's have a little top 10 going, shall we? Number 1. Lily and Mr. Conductor are both narrators of the story, due to it being the journey of two different characters, so they interject where needed in the story. 2. Lily's narration is told through her older self while she talks to her children. 3. Burnett Stone has a lot more going for him than just being a moping little emo. He actually has a lot more interaction with the other characters, especially Lily, and even has flashback sequences where he is hanging out with the previous Mr. Conductor and his ex-wife, thus giving us a more thought out backstory. Number 4. P.T. Boomer appears quite a lot in this script, not only as Burnett's rival but as a money-hungry demolition man who wants to knock down Muffle Mountain and destroy Lady on top of it. Number 5. Lily actually has a lot more going on than just being there. She wasn't even good at motivating Burnett to care, cause, he never does in the final version. In this version, they have a good stable relationship, and she's only there because her mum's pregnant, rather than just being there for the plot. She interacts with people more, she's a lot more stable as a leading character, and not being there. Number 6. Diesel 10 gets his name from Thomas, rather than being conveniently named for being the 10th Diesel in the series. Number 7. Diesel 10 was sent to the island to help out with the work, rather than just being there to kill. Number 8. In the final cut of the film it mentions the island's decay was due to the lack of magic, but in this script it explains the island is in need of repair, so lots of work is being done, such as to Tidmouth sheds and to the bridge. Number 9, when Diesel 10 finds out about the magic buffers, he doesn't just go looking for them, he actually destroys each one he comes across, hence why Splodge are at the buffers rather than just knowing they are magical. And number 10, a lot of the early scenes involving Patch and Burnett hanging around the workshop are actually 3/4 of the way into this film, just before Lily returns from Sodor. This was to cement Burnett's trust into Patch not revealing where Lady is to P.T. Boomer. And a bonus point, in one draft of the script, George the Steamroller was supposed to have a role helping Diesel 10 destroy the buffers and causing havoc on the island. It is only until the end that he reforms and turns against them, but that never happened. Also, Cranky was supposed to be in it, but he was also cut. Wow, what a degree of changes there were. It sounds like a totally differently paced movie, doesn't it? It's still not as perfect, as if I was going to do this, I would have fleshed out Burnett's character more by having an actual flashback at the beginning of the movie, showing the events that led up to the film's present, rather than just saying it through voiceovers, because that isn't fun to children and kind of makes everything a little vague, but let's move on. Along with the script, a couple of years later, another leak happened where someone got a hold of the copy of the final chase sequence, but it involved new shots and of course our late villain P.T. Boomer, as he rides on top of Diesel 10 throughout. This is actually still up on YouTube, and the oldest video upload I could find was from 2009, and it's very interesting how similar it is to the final cut, but with the additional close-ups of P.T. Boomer. Now, when these leaks happened, there was no actual outrage over this, and it actually influenced groups like Restore the Magic to pitch and crowdfund many projects towards restoring the props of the film, and or releasing this original cut of the movie, even getting Britt Allcroft on board to sort stuff out. But then, nothing happened. After campaigns and petitions, it fell silent. I mean, they were able to obtain the life-size lady prop to restore, but aside from that and a few screenshots, it was pretty quiet for a few years, like, I think over a decade, so no one really thought anything was going to come of it. But then something happened. So 2020 rolls round and celebrations are in order. It's the 75th anniversary of the Railway series, a new season has started with an ex-royal introducing a story involving the family he divorced from, a documentary about tankies named Unlikely Fandom is announced and crowdfunded. But what's this? A 20th anniversary Blu-ray release of Thomas and the Magic Railroad? What could possibly go wrong?
Foolish mortal.
Do I look mortal to you?
Here it is. Mangaun Agroesh, the left eye of Nog, the jewel worshipped by the wizards of Mu and the black priests of Atlantis.
finally passed down to Gung the Magnificent, who was chosen by the gods to conquer the world with it. And now, it's my... Ew. It's not a jewel, it's a dirty old piece of crap.
Oh boy. So where do I begin with this whirlwind of a situation? Well, I guess with what happened, I suppose. I've been trying to piece together bits and bats of the situation over the past couple of weeks since it happened, but from what I have gathered from different sources, 1. It was originally leaked in December 2019 and was passed around small groups on the internet. 2. Fast forward to May 2020, and a user on a Facebook group dedicated to Thomas and the Magic Railroad leaks the copy to all the users. 3. Sometime later that same day, I receive a DM from a user who was in that group, which is where I found out about it and got given a copy because he knew I was reviewing the movie. 4. Soon afterwards, the leak hits the Thomas community like a sack of bricks, and chaos ensues between the members of the fandom. 5. Britt Allcroft also hits the roof and rallies her Thomas troops to attack anyone who has a copy, mainly because she doesn't hold any of the rights to the brand or film, and Mattel and Sony aren't really paying any attention. 6. Hysteria continues to grow as people in the fandom lash out at each other in a frenzy of hate and totally forgetting the bigger picture. 7. Several weeks have passed and there are only a handful of uploads on YouTube, and a lot of the people are in stalemate as everyone takes a slow step away from the fandom to avoid drama. So now that you've caught up to speed on what happened, what exactly is the work print? So in the industry, when you're continuously running back and forth from set to editing room, you will on occasion have to supply multiple cuts to your film, in order to show stuff like the pacing of the film, what has been completed, if it needs reviewing by the producer or the backers of the film, test audiences, so on and so forth. And well, this is an early rough cut, if anything, as a lot of stuff is missing from it, but there is also a lot of stuff that was taken out. First off, many of the voiceovers and voice acting hasn't been completed, so Britt Allcroft gives her voice to fill in the gaps, which is amusing when you've got Angelis giving it his all and then suddenly the soft female voice kicks in randomly. Also, the special effects haven't been completed yet. The green screen in many scenes have just been quickly worked with just to show how proportions look when it's humans and models. And in some cases, it's just the raw footage from sequences that were later CGI'd, such as the Magic Railroad sequences and Thomas coming down Muffle Mountain, which, from a filmmaker standpoint, is very fascinating to watch the approach they did for these sequences, including the practical effects. Of course, we can't forget P.T Boomer. He is everywhere in this cut, showing how significant his role was in the film, even if his character doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe it wasn't a later cut, but he just shows up, talks about money and blowing at the mountain, and then goes off. But it gives characters like Patch more groundwork to develop, especially with Burnett, who, despite still being a miserable fart, has a bit more lively scenes with flashbacks with his past wife and talking to Lily, of course. It also follows the original script more closely, but a few things still confuse me slightly, like how in the final cut we have the Harold scene which causes Thomas to sneeze all day. But in this version that is all gone and he just has a cold, which has something to do with the magic disappearing, but I honestly don't know. The magic disappearing is a bit more fleshed out in this one, so it makes up for it in some parts, but overall it's nothing that could have saved the film. From a production standpoint, this is a fascinating document. If you're interested in film development and the stages films go through before the final edit, this is worth having a look. If I was a film teacher, I would use this as an example for a key study about the journey of a film. It certainly has a lot more meat to it than those 5-minute behind the scenes clips you get on DVDs. As for whether or not it's better than the final cut of the film, well, it adds more depth to the live action segments, but there are actually less Thomas scenes than there are in the final cut. If you replace this with that version, it would have probably done worse, considering many of the reasons it didn't do well was because of lack of Thomas. Now let's talk about some of the issues about this and understand why yes, piracy is a bad thing and should not be encouraged, but also why this has not caused any damage and has had no impact on anything Thomas related, other than caused a lot of people to protect themselves from finger pointing. First of all, this is not the reason the DVD was removed from Amazon and or delayed. The delay happened before the leak happened. And there could be many different reasons behind it, but I think one of the main reasons this has happened is because there is a pandemic going on at the moment. And maybe Sony and Shout have chosen to prioritize other DVD releases that will actually bring back a profit and to put their limited workforce on making them instead during this time, but it will be released later. Second point, this was not going to be on the DVD in the first place. You have to understand that this DVD was just because it coincides with the 75th anniversary and not because certain parties campaigned for its special edition cut. It is just a throw out on the shelves while the party poppers go on. If anything, the most you'd be hopeful of is the behind the scenes from the German DVD and the already released deleted scenes from the previous DVDs. Third point, everyone who is involved in the behind the scenes situation of this leak already know the main party who leaked it, and no one else's relationship with previous crew or Mattel have been damaged in the process. You just don't know about it because those who do know have more than likely dealt with it already. Fourth point, Sony and Mattel have not removed any of the leaks because they either have no actual interest or are too busy with other projects to worry about it. If they were going to give it any sort of release, the video would have been removed instantly, but considering it's still up after so long, it doesn't seem to be the case. However, if the videos do start getting taken down by either of them, be sure that they have taken it into account and may release it later. Fifth point, leaks happen all the time, and some have been very beneficial, such as how the first Sonic movie design was leaked at a conference for merchandising, which revealed that first design, which then led to the complete bombing of the first trailer. And also, the biggest successful leak was Deadpool, which, after Ryan Reynolds worked his ass off for years after Wolverine Origins to greenlight it, still didn't get what he wanted. And it wasn't until an executive leaked the test footage online, thus giving us 2 films and a further 3rd film coming out, and if it hadn't have been leaked, you'd still have this.
You want that on your shoulders, pal.
6th point, again, piracy is bad, but this is a 20-year-old film. A lot of other things have come along and continuously pushed this film to the back of the shelves. No one outside the fandom actually noticed this leak. It isn't big news. People care more about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, and that bombed hard too. But it only took a couple of years to get that confirmed. Which is why Sony and Mattel haven't done anything. The most they have done is claimed any video on YouTube, and that is just from an ad revenue perspective, not even to block it. 7th point, if you want to know what has happened the past 20 years that shows this leak doesn't matter, let me list a few things. We've had 4 Spider-Men, 5 Doctors, 3 console generations, 2 generations of My Little Pony and a film, which had every episode leaked during its entire run, including the movie, and yet the bronies managed to ignore that and the film went on to make 61 million at the box office. 4 cinematic universes, even the 2 failed ones did better. The disaster that was Sonic 06, the redemption that was Sonic Generations, followed by the second failure of Sonic Forces, followed by Sonic Mania. And, least we forget, a whopping 13 more Thomas films to date that have even more success than Magic Railroad. And they were also leaked online, to which no one I saw batted an eyelid from that community. So next time you think it's okay to attack people over something like this, you need to take a step back and think about the impact you're having on those looking in. This is a children's brand, remember? Don't act like gatekeepers choosing who is and isn't a fan based on this, because this isn't Rick and Morty, which was also leaked repeatedly. It's Thomas the Tank Engine. Stop being angry and just enjoy the small piece of history you get that remind you why you love the series. I understand your passion and respect for those involved, but we have to not get too emotive. Also, Britt Allcroft, stop rallying impressionable minds together to hunt these people down. You are damaging the brand's image that you spent years creating in the first place. I know you may not see it that way, but to people outside looking in, it shows, and really, be proud that the collection of people want to see your work. Even if it isn't completed, People young and old are taking an interest in a project you were royally screwed by big money over 20 years ago, which led to your departure from the series. This says you haven't been forgotten, and people want to see what could have been to value your hard work. It's like my Missing Coach reviews. This is me acknowledging the hard work you and people like David Mitten put into the series and how we want to preserve the tiniest fragment of that hard work that had to be cut. It's not like Drayton Manor that leaves its models to decay and get stolen. Many people in the fandom have archived this print for the future in case it's lost, just out of appreciation, not to troll you or hurt your good name. You're not losing anything over this being out. So again, take a step back and think before you push for people to do that work for you, because it's creating a bad atmosphere between fans and also possible backers to the brand in future. As for me, no, I do not intend on leaking the film. I was actually surprised this was personally sent to me in the first place. But yes, we can't stop it now, and over time you will forget about it and it will just be there in the background. Just like this review will be here always for you to look back on. But I wouldn't release something without permission, and if I'm perfectly honest, you can have this for free as well. All the people who are angry about this leak and have condemned people for showing it or having it will have a copy on their computer. So just remember that next time you feel bad about having it yourself. Woo! That was a lot. Oh. Anyway. And that is my in-depth look at the interesting history behind Thomas and the Magic Railroad. I hope you've enjoyed this, and hopefully I didn't spray you too much with my verbal points at the end. But of course, if you don't agree with me, I totally understand that, and this is why we have these conversations. But please be pleasant in future to one another. You're all in the same boat after all. But as always, my name is Nick Starwind, you have been my audience, and remember to like, share, subscribe, stick it on a badger, attach it to a brick, mail it to a person who doesn't know who I am so they can find out who I am, and also, as a bonus, if you can spare some change, Gavna, you will find a little donations link on my channel and in the description below with all sorts of other ways to contact and follow me. But, until then, I shall see you next time, and remember, sparkle, sparkle, sparkle!